Johnny McGonigal, Bob Flounders here. Blue White Breakdown Podcast. It's a magnificent Monday afternoon, 1:30 East Coast time. Talking to you on Penn State's first of two bye weeks. Johnny, I know that you're doing well. You know why I know you're doing well? Because the Philadelphia Eagles survived their treacherous trip to Brazil. Penn State they struggled 34-27 over a scrappy Bowling Green side. Thank God Bowling Green didn't have their best running back, or it could have even been more dangerous. But hey, it's Monday. It's a bye week. Hopefully there'll be some time for us, Johnny. You never know. But I got a couple things for you. What's the number one thing you need to get off your chest to start this podcast?
Number one thing.
Yeah.
You know what? Here's just a takeaway from the weekend.
Good.
Penn State won. They did not look good.
Mm-hmm.
They did not look good in the first half. The defense was bad. The tackling was bad.
Yeah.
Tom Allen got out schemed. The offense stalled out a bit here and there. After the first turnover, they would have liked more points. There's a lot to correct. And we're sitting here in the first bye week. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to correct on both sides of the ball. But later on Saturday, we saw a college football playoff contender with the best odds, the best chances, percentage chances to run the rest of the table and go undefeated in Notre Dame. And they lost to a MAC team at home as a multi-touchdown favorite. And so I'm not telling Penn State fans to be happy, and just be honky-dory with the fact that you beat Bowling Green. But you know what? Stuff happens in college football. And so just keep some perspective here that it could be worse. It could be a lot worse for your team that is a legitimate college football playoff contender. You could be sitting here after a loss to Bowling Green. So they did win. They got some things to correct. But, just as the season progresses, there's going to be tough games. You always look back on seasons, even seasons that end really well. And there's always tough games. Be happy you're not Notre Dame on this Monday.
Yeah. I do agree with you there. That was a fairly stunning result. I think we were still in the Beaver Stadium press box, getting some stuff done, squared away Saturday night, and also for Sunday morning or starting Sunday morning stuff. I wasn't even aware of it, Johnny. And then I heard there were a couple beat writers there left with us. And it got real loud in the press box, and I was like, "What's going on?" And they said it was Notre Dame. Bowling Green was going down to or not Bowling Green. Notre Dame, Northern Illinois was going down to the wire. I'm like, "What?" And then it was every bit as bad as the final score indicated. Notre Dame was kind of paralyzed, I think, on offense. Building on that, Johnny, I would say this. This might not be a hot take, but I will say this. That Bowling Green offense, that guy knows what he's doing, Scott Loeffler. That's a MAC team that had a lot of seniors. They had a veteran quarterback. They had a couple of really good skill pieces on the outside in the tight end and the wideout. I think the wideout played at Auburn, played against Penn State before. And that tight end, he can't block, but he is a matchup problem.
He is.
How about this, Johnny? I'm not sure, given the way that Penn State's offense struggled last year with a good defense, I'm not sure that Penn State wins this game if it was last year's play caller and last year's offense, because what I'm trying to say in a complimentary way of Andy Kotelnicki is this guy and this offense has answers. They really do. And I think that to me, it might be as almost of a biggest takeaway for me out of the Bowling Green game than the tale of two halves of the Penn State's defense. Because I feel like this offense, the way that it's designed, and the way that the quarterback is playing in it, right? It's just a good thing, I think, for the rest of the season. They don't have to lean. I mean, I just felt like last year, if the defense wasn't lights out against a good team, or if they didn't play superbly, Penn State could be in trouble. I don't know that I feel that way this year. And I think I think that this offense is going to continue to look like this. I am a little concerned about the wide receiver room. I know that James Franklin is not. I'm a little concerned, but the way that these running backs have been schemed up and the way that they have gotten those guys into space and the way that Andy kind of designs his run game and, the way that I I really hope Tyler Warren stays healthy, because when I think about Penn State's most irreplaceable players this year, I think that my first two are the tight end and the quarterback. I know that Bo Prabula is a really good player, but they need those two guys to stay healthy because they have depth at a lot of positions, but they're gonna need Tyler Warren in big games, and they're gonna need Drew Allar as a runner and a thrower.
You look at the answers that Andy Kotelnicki and the offense had, it was time and time again in that first half.
Yeah,
At some points, Bob, it felt like the offense was like playing angry. There was a run in there, after Bowling Green scored a touchdown. There was a run by Nick Singleton where he just like ripped through arm tackles and then they end up scoring right after. And it just seemed like they were playing just angry. And I don't know if it was angry towards Bowling Green. I think it might have been angry towards their own defense that, hey, this is a game right now. Like, really? And I put it on Twitter, social media, and we were talking about during the game, like, Tom Allen and the defense really, they need to look in the mirror, at halftime and get this corrected. And a credit to them because, coming out of the second half, they did correct a lot of things. They tackled better. They really didn't I think Bowling Green scored 3 points in the second half. It was a field goal drive, at the end. So credit to them that they were able to make the end game adjustments and right the ship in game, which is a tough thing to do. But early in the first half, and then even as the game progressed, Andy Kotelnicki, the new offensive coordinator, and the offense to have the answers that they had, and wide receiver maybe a little bit of a question mark, but Amari Evans made a couple big plays.
correct. He would have had it. Yeah. Yep.
He had a touchdown. Another big game was called back because of an offensive pass interference. Honestly, if he just kept running, he didn't have to disengage, that from the DB. He would have had a touchdown. I think he just got a little happy on the physicality there. But Tyler Warren, 8 catches for 146 yards. Like, we heard all offseason about how, Kotelnicki gets the ball in the hands of his best playmakers. Well, again, we saw that, when there's matchup problems, from Bowling Green's, defense, when the linebackers were a weak point, Tyler Warren gets 8 catches for 146 yards. It was a record-setting day for a Penn State tight end. Nick Singleton and Katron Allen, each over the 100-yard mark rushing. Kotelnicki and the offense did its job. Back-to-back weeks scoring 34 points. I'm sure Penn State fans would have liked maybe 45 or 48 or whatever, against Bowling Green. Yeah, there were a couple drives where they stalled out and they would have liked touchdowns. But I think coming, out of this week and into a bye week now, there was obviously a question mark around the offense. Are they going to be explosive? Are they going to do the things that they've talked about throughout the offseason? And they've done it so far.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I thought what I was really happy to see at the very end of the game, not at the end, but so the Singleton long run, the touchdown run, that kind of after the interception, the defense got 2 interceptions. Rojas had one. Zakee Wheatley had another. I think they scored right after Wheatley's pick, I believe, on the very next play from the 41. But one of the things I thought that is going to be important to remember or hold on to on that touchdown run, not one but 2 Penn State tight ends got blocks. Tyler Warren washed down a linebacker inside to create part of the hole. But on the kick-out block, that was Luke Reynolds, the true freshman tight end who kicked that guy out, another linebacker. I only bring this up, Johnny, because I'm not sure when we're going to see Andrew Rapplier again. And if we do see him, I don't think it's going to be anytime soon. I believe he was on crutches at the game. James Franklin said after in the news conference that because he was asked about, I think, injuries, and he said it happened fairly recently. So that leads me to believe that it might happen Friday. But Luke Reynolds has changed his body after enrolling in January. I think he was about a 220 maybe. He was just essentially a talented kid, a big wideout, right? A big wideout, pretty much in high school, who they projected as a tight end. I think he's in the 240s now. And the fact, I mean, I know it's a Bowling Green linebacker and not an Ohio State linebacker, but the fact that he got the block in a big spot when they needed him to. Penn State's going to need multiple tight ends. It can't just be Tyler Warren. You know, they're going to need 2 and 3 tight end sets. Khalil Dinkins came back. He still probably is. I think he's still rounding into form, but I just think you're going to start to see as the season gets deeper and deeper. Penn State's going to need to be able to count on some players that really haven't popped yet, but they're starting to pop. You know, Cooper Cousins, who we saw in week 1, but maybe not against Bowling Green, is another guy that they could need him. They're going to need some more answers for pressing problems that come up. I think Luke Reynolds is definitely a guy to watch moving forward in light of what's going on at tight end. They might need that freshman safety at some point. I know Kevin Winston didn't finish the game. Johnny kind of felt like he didn't have his helmet on, and that hopefully – I don't want to say hopefully it was just a concussion because that's a brain injury, but hopefully it's something he can bounce back from sooner rather than later. And here's your segue, Johnny. I don't think they're going to need some of these guys against Kent State in a couple weeks.
No, Bob, but you know what? We did say that about Bowling Green.
We did, but Kent State's pretty terrible.
They're awful. Kent State lost to St. Francis this past weekend.
Yes.
After getting blown out. They had a couple of fluky touchdowns, but for all intents and purposes, they got blown out at Pitt in week 1, and then they lost to St. Francis. Credit to St. Francis.
Yeah. Well, Kent State's got an easy one this Saturday. They should be. They got a confidence builder this Saturday going into Penn State at Tennessee.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck. You know, it's. Yeah, that's a tough one. Tennessee is rolling right now. I mean, they jumped up my ballot this week, my AP ballot.
Yeah.
They blew the doors off of NC State, who I think NC State's a solid team. You know, not to say they're like a 10-win team or anything, but you know, win 51-10, I think it was. So yeah, Kent State. I'm pegging them for an 0-4 start. And I agree with you though. I think some more guys are going to get in. Against Kent State. I want to put a disclaimer that I said this exact same thing last week about Bowling Green. You know what? And credit to Bowling Green, because after seeing what we saw on
They're
Saturday,
pretty good.
I wouldn't be surprised if they ultimately win the MAC. You know, them or Northern Illinois, I guess, too, right?
Yeah.
After upsetting Notre Dame. So I would expect more guys to get in. And you mentioned Luke Reynolds. I would expect Luke Reynolds to play significantly more as the season goes on. And that's a credit to him, you know, what he's done, you know, since enrolling, you know, in the weight room, on the practice field, but then also just realistically looking at the depth chart now, seeing Andrew Rapplier, the second-year tight end, on crutches, on the sideline. He might be done for a while. You know, no official word out from James Franklin, but I would. I'm in your boat, Bob. I would be surprised to see him. You know, I think it's a long-term injury. So, you know, when you look at the tight end depth chart, you've got Tyler Warren, who is your unequivocal number 1 tight end and probably your number 1 target in this offense. I know you wrote about that after the game. And then you have Khalil Dinkins, who didn't play in week 1, did play in week 2. You know, had a nice catch, I think, to move the chains there. But you know, Luke Reynolds played a good bit, the former 5-star recruit, and you know, looking the part. And the way you started this conversation, Bob, and you know, talking about the tight ends and the kickout blocks and everything, something I want to mention too is just the fact that Nick Singleton had another 40-yard run.
Yeah,
and he had patience on that one. You know, he gets the ball, he kind of runs into it, you know, the hole isn't there inside. He notices the opening on the left, bounces it, and goes. And I just think that he's playing with a lot more confidence now than he was last year. Last year, they were trying to make him more of a complete back in between the tackles. And I think his head got a little screwy.
Yeah.
You know, he started pressing for big plays when they weren't there. And now he's just kind of playing more free, and you do see that. And so, you know, when Nick doesn't have any 40-yard runs last year, and now he's got 2 in the first 2 weeks of the season, combine that with Katron, you know, getting, you know, on the board in terms of a 100-yard game after having 10 carries for 20 yards at West Virginia. I mean, at the end of the game, you know, we're standing on the sidelines and the, you know, the seconds are ticking away, you know, in Morgantown. and Katron was just sitting by himself on the bench, and he looked kind of upset. And the kind of game that he had, I guess I get it. But to keep both of those guys happy is paramount. As you
Yeah.
push one into a long season. And so I think that was a really good sign for the two running backs to both contribute the way that they did.
I agree. I'm glad you mentioned your ballot because I think we need to talk about it. I want to talk about. I know there is a lot of love on your end that goes into that, a lot of work. You don't. I think there's probably some people that probably don't take that quite seriously, and they just kind of. I don't want to say go through the motions. I know you do not do that. I know you spend a lot of time on it. As you put it together this week, how did you weigh Penn State's performance against a good MAC team, the Jekyll and Hyde effort of their defense, but also with what you noted? There were some good teams that like Oregon, man, Oregon and Boise State. That was life or death. Notre Dame goes down. It's just if you don't show up. If you don't show up home or away on a Saturday against a decent opponent, Bowling Green was probably really looking forward to this game because they were counted out of it. I'm sure they weren't happy to be 34-point underdogs at kickoff. They have a history of giving good teams a run. They played Michigan last year. The final was 31-6. If they didn't turn it over twice, it was probably going to be 17-6. This was the team that won the championship. I just think it's not that easy. It's not that easy every Saturday to kind of roll it out there, especially against a veteran team. So when you put together your ballot, how did you weigh all of that? Where do you see Penn State? The fact that they finished the game strong, did that carry more weight on your ballot than maybe what you saw in the opening 30 minutes?
Yeah, we talked about the defense already, the way that they rebounded, and respected that in the way that they went to the locker room, figured it out, came out and performed. And I have been impressed with the offense through 2 games. And so, I had Penn State. We'll back it up. In the official, the overall ballot, they stayed at number 8.
Mm-hmm.
I had them on my ballot last week at 7. And then I ended up just sliding them up a spot to 6 on my ballot this week because of the Notre Dame loss. I had Notre Dame ahead of them. And so with Notre Dame losing and falling behind, now I went into the night game as I was putting together my ballot. I went into the 10 o'clock Oregon-Boise State game.
Right.
After dropping Oregon behind Penn State last week, a spot or 2 behind. And I said, if Oregon, after week 1, when they barely beat Idaho at home, I really respect Boise State. I rate Boise State. I like Ashton Janty, their running back, and everything else that they have going for them, and still think that they're probably the G5 team that will represent in the CFP this year. I went into that game saying, okay, if Oregon really impresses me here, and they put pedal to the metal, and they were 20-point favorites, and if they look like Oregon, the Oregon that many thought, then I'll jump Oregon back up above Penn State. But I didn't because they didn't. They needed a game-winning field goal at the very end. So I Penn State at 6, and honestly, if you were to, if I was talking to another voter and they had Penn State at 9 or 8 or whatever, that's all fair. Because I think it's pretty clear there's a top 3 right now in Georgia. I put Texas above Ohio State after what Texas did to Michigan. Georgia, Texas, and Ohio State, and then beyond that, from 4 to really 7, 8. You can convince me. I have Ole Miss number 4, Bama 5, Penn State 6. I think I put Missouri up at 7, and then Tennessee 8. I mentioned earlier I'm really impressed by Tennessee. What they've done through 2 weeks, and so I think they're a major player in the SEC. But that's where I have Penn State 6, and if you, Bob, if you were like, they should be 7, that's fair, that's fine. But that's kind of where I'm at.
How far did the Irish drop in your ballot?
The Irish fell pretty far.
Go ahead.
17. Let me pull it up for you.
It had to have been a precipitous drop. You just you have to do it.
It was. They fell to 16.
Yeah.
And you know what? I thought about dropping them even further because that was just an inexplicable loss.
Yeah.
It's really bad. It's really, really bad when you have the season, they beat Texas A&M in week 1 at College Station, and
Yeah,
that's the only reason why I didn't really drop them any. Like I
sure.
could have put them off the ballot. Like if you just drop Notre Dame completely after that loss to Northern Illinois, I wouldn't have batted an eye. I would have been fine. But I figured there's enough, big time teams with one loss so far, this season. LSU, Michigan, Clemson, but yeah, Notre Dame. That was so bad. It was so bad. I put Michigan 17. By the way, I just thought it was a touchdown spread and they lost by 19 and it wasn't even really that close. Like
Yeah.
Michigan's, we talk in the preseason, Bob, about like, okay, yeah, Penn State's schedule and, they miss Oregon and Michigan this year. I don't think they're missing anything by not having Michigan on the schedule because, their defense might be good, but they also just got torched by Quinn Ewers. Maybe that speaks more to what Texas is as a legitimate national title contender this year, bringing a lot of pieces back. Their offensive line is incredible at Texas, but Michigan, they might be looking at like a 7 or 8 win season, honestly, because that offense is that bad.
All right, Johnny, before we came on this podcast, I promised I was going to throw the kitchen sink at you and talk about some I have 2 for you, but I guess we probably should mention it's my fault. It's not your fault. You're just reacting to the stuff I throw at you. So Penn State, Kent State, 3:30 kick, just announced a little while ago, early Monday afternoon. I don't think the network has been revealed yet, but I walked out of the press box Saturday and somebody told me, hey, don't be surprised if that's going to be a night game. I was like, and I still was thinking that. I'm a little relieved that it's 3:30. It's better than a night game. I prefer it to kick off at 9 a.m. so we could just kind of get about our day. But that game is a 3:30 kick, Johnny, just so the Penn State fans know. I know they don't necessarily come on here for Penn State news, but I feel like I was obligated to reveal that. But now back to what I said. So you mentioned Michigan and the final score wasn't as bad as that game really was. I think Texas missed a field goal. Michigan looked really inept. They did lose a lot of players. I think they're starting a former walk-on at quarterback, but there's still some talent on that team. My first question for you is, and you'll see where I'm going with this. How good of a program builder? You could talk about Connor Stallions all you want. How good of a program builder, though, is Jim Harbaugh? When you look at what he did at Stanford, you look at what he did with the 49ers, you look at what he did with Connor Stallions' help at Michigan, and the Chargers kicked the snot out of the Raiders yesterday in his debut. It looked an awful lot like a Michigan team. It's built an awful lot like a Michigan team, but because I'm heading in the NFL direction at the conclusion of this blue-white breakdown. But how good of a program builder is that guy, in your opinion?
He's pretty good. He also knows when to get out.
Yeah.
Because Jim Harbaugh is a former quarterback himself.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he saw what was coming down the line after J.J. McCarthy.
Yeah.
And, Alex Orji was the projected starter all offseason. And I'm supposing there's a reason why he isn't the starter for Michigan because he's not very good. And I'll tell you what, Davis Warren also isn't very good. And not only that, it wasn't just J.J. McCarthy either. It's a lot of pieces on the offense that lost. You also lost Connor Stallions and some staff members who were helping you cheat. And also you're avoiding a show clause and cause, and you're avoiding NCAA violations. So the man is a good program builder, and he knows when to bail. So that's where I'll, he won the national title. All credit to them. They did their thing last year, but the man knows when to get out.
Yeah. Andrew Luck at Stanford, right? Colin Kaepernick and I think Alex Smith were the quarterbacks with the Niners. Mm-hmm. He had a first-round pick at quarterback when he was at Michigan. Justin Herbert's not bad with the Chargers. So
yeah.
But I do think I do have to give that guy credit because the Chargers last year folded their tents at the first sign of trouble in they lost more games with leads than I think any other team in the NFL. They were just horribly managed by I think it was Brandon Staley, but I'll give Jimmy Harbaugh a little credit on that one. Here's where I'm going though.
Sure.
for Penn State fans, and for you, I'm asking you specifically because you know where I'm going with this. For Penn State fans who follow their players in the NFL, and I think they do. I think there's a lot of Penn State fans that root for teams with their Penn State players, some of their favorites on them. Do you think there is a chance, Johnny McGonigal, that former Penn State players belong in the top 5 list of NFL players playing in the league right now? I think 2 of them do.
Micah being one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Saquon's one of them?
I do. I think now that he's got. Did you see how bad the Giants were yesterday? Like they were, bad.
I did. I made sure to keep close tabs on that game during Red Zone because nothing other than an Eagles win brings me more joy than a Cowboys or Giants loss.
Sure.
And I knew we weren't going to get that. Why were the Browns were favored against the Cowboys, right?
Why? I mean, I make it a habit to never wager on that team because I get too worked up anyway. But I think that about Saquon, like really, when you just look at him and what he can do, I'm just going to say, what is really the difference between him and McCaffrey? I mean, I just think they're not twins, but he can do everything McCaffrey can do. He just has been handcuffed for the first 4 or 5 years of his career, much like McCaffrey was when he was saddled with the Carolina Panthers who tried to run him into the ground. I think that Saquon Barkley, if he's healthy and he plays 17 games with that offensive line surrounded by that skilled talent, I think he is he's legitimately in the conversation to be the best running back in the NFL. And I think you can make a case that he's a top 5 player in the NFL. I think he's that talented.
Yeah, look, I don't disagree at all. I really don't disagree at all. And as an Eagles fan watching what he did.
Yeah, he made Green Bay look silly.
It was great. And you know what? For the Penn State fans out there who might also be Eagles fans, there's a lot of the crossover, right?
Sure.
And watching Saquon's first touchdown be a wheel route.
Yeah.
The visions of the Big Ten title game, come back out. And so, yeah, it was fun, watching Saquon in an Eagles uniform, after, watching from afar and seeing the kind of crap that he had to go through with the Giants, whether it was injury, whether it was the offensive line, whether it was trying desperately to support an awful, terrible quarterback who now has a beard, so people think he's different. I'm just happy for him that he's in a better situation, and it's also nice that it helps the team. I support.
Yeah, and Mike Zimmer, they had a good defensive coordinator last year, who's now the Commanders coach.
Mm-hmm.
But Mike Zimmer, when it comes to defensive coordinators, like if you give him a chess piece like Micah Parsons, like he was all over the place, lined up all over the place. And he had a sack, a pass defense, and he had 5 quarterback hits. And the way that the game is going, you can measure a player by sacks, and that's fine. But like he hit Deshaun Watson, he was after him from stem, and Zimmer has him in the right spot, whether it's in the A gap or moving him around. I really do think that Penn State fans, if you're going to, those 2 guys, if they're healthy, I think Micah could be the defensive player of the year. I think he will be in that defense. And I think Saquon Barkley could be first team all pro. I really do. It's a quarterback's race for, the MVP anyway. So that it just doesn't happen anymore. But that guy in that offense, when he's healthy, I think there's a lot of Penn State fans that are Eagles fans that are going to be pretty happy with the way this season's going to play out. And it's exciting. I'm happy for Saquon. I also remember him. Everyone associates him with the 16 and 17 Penn State teams and what Joe, playing with those skill guys around him and what Joe Moorhead did. I also saw him on that 2015 offense, which was ruined. They just had inferior talent around him. They didn't have the greatest OC in the world. And that guy still ran for 190 yards against a really, really good Ohio State defense, in Columbus, had a 45-yard touchdown run called back. the guy is legit. He's just legit, and I'm excited to see him. I'm not an Eagles fan. I'm a big Saquon Barkley fan, and when Dallas and the Eagles collide, that's going to be an even bigger battle between those two. I'm excited. I think Penn State fans are excited. Johnny, I know you're excited. Is there anything else we need to get to from your end on this blue-white breakdown?
No, I just hope Saquon stays healthy. Like, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that could derail this, and I don't even want to put it out there in the universe. But please, like, stay healthy. I don't want to see Kenny Gainwell. I don't want to see Kenny Gainwell at all. So please stay healthy.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I am always of the opinion that, I want to see, I don't care. I want to see teams at their best. I'm a Cowboys fan. I want to see them with Barkley, with all their guys healthy. I want to, because if you beat them, it's all the more credit to you, right? It's the challenge of it, right? Bowling Green didn't blink against Penn State, and I just think that it's a better game, right, with the best players healthy. And I hope Saquon can stay healthy. I hope Micah can stay healthy. Fryermuth just got paid. I hope he can stay healthy. He's had some injury issues, so there's a lot of Penn State. Chris Godwin yesterday. How about let's give him a shout out, because I'll tell you what, when he's healthy, he is a very underrated player. There is a very long the tree of Penn State players that are difference makers in the NFL. It's a pretty fertile tree. It's flowering, it's blooming, and he was injured last year. Tough guy. I'm just happy when all those guys are healthy. All right, Johnny. Great job. Great job. Hopefully you can enjoy the rest of your bye week Monday. Probably working on something. I'm trying to get a story posted for tomorrow, but I'll be in touch if you want. Max and I can do something later. What?
Did you hit stop on the record?